don't think we talk about how strange The Hobbit actually feels. Not the story, we all know the story. Small guy, big adventure, dragon gold, all of that. I mean the feeling of it. Because every time I go back to it, it doesn't feel like a children's book, not really. It feels like something older than that. Like you've opened a door you weren't supposed to open, and it's warm and inviting at first, and then something slowly changes. But you didn't notice it, really. I think we call it a children's book because it's an easy label. Yeah, on the surface it fits. It's got songs, it's got episodic narrative that talks directly to you. It's got moments that feel almost playful. But then there's something underneath the tone that feels patient. Not simple, patient. Like the book is willing to wait for you to catch up. And I think that's why, if you gave it to a kid now, a lot would struggle with it. Not because it's difficult in a technical sense, but because it doesn't rush to meet you where you are. It expects you to sit still, and we just go, not very good at that anymore. The thing that stands out for me the most is the atmosphere. The beginning of The Hobbit is probably the most comforting openings in fantasy. The Shire feels safe, predictable, warm, you know exactly where you are. But the moment Bilbo steps out of the door, something changes. And it never quite goes back to that, never fully. There's always something quite... Well, there's this sense that the world is bigger than it should be. Not in that expected, oh, there's a mystery here. It's slightly more uncomfortable than that. Forests that feel too deep, mountains that feel too old, even air that in certain places feels heavy. And Bilbo isn't a hero in the way we're used to now. He doesn't walk into the atmosphere ready for it. He feels it, he reacts to it, and sometimes he just wants to go home. And honestly, that's what makes it work. I think at its core, The Hobbit is a story about being somewhere you don't belong and slowly realising you might have to become someone else to survive it. And I don't mean that in the cliched chosen one narrative. It's more quiet, uncomfortable. Bilbo lies. He makes decisions he probably wouldn't have made if he stayed in the Shire. And the book doesn't celebrate that. It just lets it happen. There's this sense that the adventure is shaping him whether he likes it or not. And that's a very different kind of story than what we're used to now. When growth is usually framed as something empowering, here it feels more, maybe breaking the soul a little. There's a moment in The Hobbit where the tone shifts, and it never fully shifts back. And it's subtle enough that you might miss it. But obviously, by the time you reach the climax, by the time you're dealing with greed and tension, the build-up to the conflict, the story doesn't feel like it did when it started. It's heavier, quieter, more serious than it lets on. And let's be real, he isn't just a dragon. He's the presence. The weight sitting on top of everything, and suddenly the stakes aren't just fun adventure anymore. They're about desire, possession, what people are willing to do with something valuable is in front of them. And that's not really a children's theme, not in the way we usually mean it, if you look at modern kids' fiction. I think the reason The Hobbit feels the way it does is because it comes from a place that isn't trying to entertain you at first. It's not chasing your attention, it's telling you a story the way stories used to be told. Slow, layered, sometimes a bit uneven, sometimes wandering, and definitely episodic. And because of that, it feels older than it actually is, and I don't mean outdated, just rooted in something deeper. You can feel that Tolkien cared about the weight of these stories, the history behind them, the idea that even a simple tale carries echoes of something bigger. And that's hard to replicate now because most things are designed to grab you instantly. This book doesn't grab you, it waits. Reading The Hobbit as an adult is a weird experience because you don't just read the story, you feel the distance between who you are now and the person you were when stories like this felt simpler. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe the book hasn't become more complicated, maybe we have. We bring more into it now, more expectations, more noise, less patience. And the book just stays the same. I see a lot of people saying The Hobbit is either overly simplistic or overly complicated. And ironically, I think it can be both both at the same time. It's not dense and it's not inaccessible, but as an adult, it asks you to think. This little, air quotes, children's book, that's just an episodic tale designed to be read to your children at night, chapter by chapter. But I do think it asks something from you we don't always want to give anymore: time, attention, a willingness to let a story sit that doesn't rush, doesn't explain everything, and doesn't feel comfortable all the time. And maybe that's why it still works. Not because it's easy, but because it isn't. There are an amazing amount of layers set out within The Hobbit, and it's always fun going back to it. I also think now the idea that books can exist that have to be this from chapter 1. The Hobbit evolves. Chapters get darker. Things change. Moments are scary, moments are light. And it all intertwines into a weird little book about a hobbit. I'm Darv James. If you want to support this channel, remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment. If you want to get involved in the conversation and go a little deeper, we have a podcast and early access available to channel members and Patreon. And if you made it to the end, just Google Leonard Nimoy and The Hobbit, and you're in for a ride.